Hello, grade 9s. Welcome back to another lesson for social sciences. I hope you are good, you are well. Today we're going to look at apartheid and racism. So let's get on with it, grade 9s. Okay, just a reminder, next week you'll be writing informal assessment for all the subjects. So for social sciences, you're going to do the informal assessment on the 23rd of July, next week, on a Thursday. So the topics that I'm going to assess you on, for history, I'm going to assess you on the World War II, and for geography, map skills. Remember, you did these two topics in term 1. So we revised World War II, and then we're going to revise map skills from next week, Monday, before you write your informal assessment. Remember, map skills, you did it, so we'll be just revising, go through. So we won't look much deeper into details. It will be just a revision. So next week, you are writing a test, an informal assessment on the 23rd. The two topics that I'm going to assess you on, World War II and map skills. So during this week, if you've got a textbook, revise those two topics, go through what you did in term 1, so that when you write your test next week, you are prepared. Please do that, grade 9s. Please, please. Okay. Okay. Just a recap on what you did last time, yesterday, during the lesson. So remember, we started a new topic, turning points in modern South African history since 1948. So we looked at the Universal Declaration of Human Rights yesterday. Do you still remember? We covered the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So we looked at what human rights were, what is the UDHR, and the importance of recognizing human rights. That is what we looked at yesterday. Okay. I gave you homework. I hope you did your homework, grade 9s. I hope you did your homework. Let's just share the homework that I gave you yesterday. So that was the homework. Question number 1, what does UDHR stand for? Universal Declaration of Human Rights. So just correct your work. Number 2, name and 10 human rights that are in the UDHR. So you're supposed to name 10 human rights, any human rights that are stipulated in the UDHR. Number 3, explain the importance of recognizing human rights. Explain the importance of recognizing human rights. Why is it important to recognize human rights? So I hope you did your homework there. Now, today's topic, we're going to look at definition of racism. What is racism? And then we're going to look at apartheid and the myth of race. So, what is racism? You always hear about racism, racism. What is it all about? It is a discrimination of a person's race, unfair treatment and division of people based on their skin color, the race. That's why it's racism. The belief that different races possess distinct characteristics, abilities, or qualities, and distinguish people as inferior or superior to one another. So racism is a certain belief that, okay, other people are better than other people because of their skin color. So there's unfair treatment of those people. A division is made among people because of their skin color. That is what is called racism. Now, there are types of racism, many types of racism. We're going to look at these four. Number one, there's this one called historical racism. It's racism based on origins of people. So where you're coming from. Number two, scientific racism. This is racism based on physical appearances of people. So just by looking at their physical appearances and treat them unfairly, it's scientific racism. Number three, institutional racism. Activities and policies in a country that protect the advantages of a dominant group. Activities and policies in a country that protect the advantages of a dominant group. So this institutional racism, it happened in South Africa, which was called Apartheid. So they were using policies, unfair policies, protecting the white people. Number four, new racism. Negative attitudes towards other groups of people. So this racism is a new form of racism. For example, xenophobia. When you've got negative attitudes towards a certain group of people in a community, like xenophobia, the fear of foreign people, those people who come from other countries. So these are the types of racism that we looked at today. Historical racism, scientific racism, institutional racism, new racism. Okay. Let's look at the myth of race. Some always say that race is a myth that was created by people in their minds. It's not true that there's race. What do you think? Race is linked with using physical characteristics such as skin color to distinguish people. So race, it just started when people were saying they are blacks, they are Indians, they are colored. Race is regarded as just a myth. The variations that we create on people are not significant because all people are the same genetically. Remember, people are created the same with the same genetics, but we create this myth called race, putting people into different classes of skin color. Therefore, our beliefs on physical differences of people are false, yet they have been regarded as true. So we've taken this myth as something to be true. this race, that they are white people, black people. But the truth is we are all the same. So that is the myth of race. It is just our own beliefs on physical differences on people, which are false. Before the 17th century, ethnicity was the term used rather than race. What is ethnicity? Have you ever heard of the word ethnicity? Ethnicity is belonging to a social group that has a common national or cultural tradition. It's called ethnicity. So this ethnicity, it was used before the 17th century, before race was used later on. So back then, before the 17th century, you were belonging to a social group that has got the same cultural tradition. It was called ethnicity. The difference between ethnicity and racism is that ethnicity is a cultural aspect. So we're looking at the culture framework of a society. And race is a biological aspect, something that you're born with, your skin color. After 17th century, scientists started to use race to classify people. So the scientists, they come up with these theories that, oh, they are black people, they are colored people, they are white people, Asian people. That is how the race started. As a result, a hierarchy among humans was created. A hierarchy was created among humans. So it meant that other people were important on top there, others were in the middle level, others were at the bottom line, according to races. So actually this race that was created to classify people, it created a lot of problems for humans. Because now we say black, this one is black, this one is white. Now, we are done with looking at racism. Now let's look at apartheid. You have heard of this word so many times. You can still hear it now. Apartheid, apartheid. It shaped South Africa back then. It was happening in South Africa. So let's look at apartheid. This was a form of racial segregation system enforced by the White National Party, NP, government in South Africa from 1948 to 1994. So this national party that was ruling South Africa, they came up with this system of racial segregation called apartheid. Apartheid means to separate. Apartheid means to separate. So they were going to separate people according to their race. The NP government used the apartheid to separate black people, including colored and Indian also, from white people. So white people were supposed to be on their own. Black, colored and Indian were supposed to be on their own. So the NP government used the apartheid to separate those people. People in South Africa were classified according to race. White people were protected with civil rights and had access to land ownership. and also the country's wealth. So the white people had many benefits during that time because they were protected by the law. But other people like black people, colored, Indian, they were suffering. Black people were just regarded as inferior. So white people were superior, black people were just regarded as inferior. Also, colored and the Indian, they were also inferior at that time of apartheid in South Africa. So this apartheid system was to separate people, the blacks, the colored, the Indian on their own, and the white people on their own. The white people would gain main benefits. They would have the civil rights, whereas the black people, nothing. Let's talk about it now. How did apartheid affect South Africa before 1994? What do you think? How did apartheid affect South Africa? Just think about it. How did it affect South Africa before 1994, the apartheid? Remember the unfair treatment of black people, of Indian people, of colored people. They were not allowed to go in certain places. They were not supposed to work other types of jobs that were done by white people. Think about all those things. They were not supposed to go to move to other places or other areas that were meant for white people. In schools, there were schools for whites, schools for blacks. Even the curriculum that was taught, there was curriculum for whites, curriculum for blacks. Now, another question. Were human rights considered during apartheid? Were they considered? What do you think? The apartheid government, the National Party, did they ever think about the human rights of people? Certainly not. They didn't. Because they were discriminating people, unfair treatment. So they did not consider human rights for people. Now, I want you to research on the following key terms. We're going to cover them in the next lesson. They're very important. Number one, racial segregation. Number two, grand apartheid. Number three, Natives Land Act. Number four, Bantustan. Number five, forced removals. Research on those five: racial segregation, grand apartheid, Natives Land Act, Bantustan, forced removal. Please do research on those key terms. They're very important for you to know, grade 9. So just copy them somewhere quickly. I'll just give you a few seconds. Research on those 5 terms. We're going to look at them the next lesson. Now, time for your homework. Let me just share your homework. Here is your homework. You are going to define the following terms. There are 6 of them. A, race. B, apartheid. C, discrimination. D, ethnicity. E, myth. F, racism. So you define those terms, those words, 6 of them. Copy them somewhere. I'll give you a few minutes. I hope you're done. Grade 9s. Okay, so just a reminder, please. Let me just go back on the assessment that is taking place next week. The topics that I'm going to assess you, World War II and map skills. Make sure you focus on these ones before you write the test next week. So World War II for history and map skills for geography. Okay, so that was it, grade 9s. Thank you so much. Please do your homework and research on the key terms that I gave you. And then I'll see you same time tomorrow. Prepare in advance for your informal assessment that is the next week. Then I'll see you next week. I'll see you tomorrow, sorry. I'm talking of next week now. Okay, so take care, do your work, and prepare. I don't want anyone to fail social sciences. Please. So if you've got any question, you email me. That is my email, the second one. Okay, bye, grade 9s.